Alrighty, here we are, week 15, and we are into our last section in this course for the Udemy course. But as I've said before, and it's worth repeating, right, there's still some good content after we finish, and I definitely recommend you take a look at some of this. Matter of fact, I had a student take this class prior. He continued through learning Babel and Webpack, and came into my React class definitely benefiting from understanding these concepts. So I just think there's still some good content you can consume. So for this time, and I'm actually going to make a little modification if you want to take it. Let me just bring it up over here and pull up a new tab. One thing is that I realized in reviewing the content today that it kind of made more sense to stop, and I'm looking at next week. If you want to stop on 110, you can. Otherwise, you can go ahead and do 111. Now, why do I say that? Because in here, he's really introduced some really fundamental concepts that I'm, again, very excited to see you being exposed to, because they will prep you for the future JavaScript that you hopefully will see in some way, and this idea of asynchronous JavaScript. But in this first section, he first prepped this idea, and it's okay if you don't totally get this concept. But I think hopefully between him introducing it, the challenges that he did, and now I have another one, it should help. But the idea that when you're making an asynchronous call, so now these are calls out to the web, and I believe he talked about this, but just be clear that this call that he made here was to his own API code. Now, if you take my Node class, we actually create the API, which is a wonderful deepening of your understanding. And then in this one, he used an existing API endpoint using this XHTML HTTP request, which when I first saw that he was doing this, I was like, okay, that's a little old. And it is, but here's the reality. You will probably see this somewhere out on the web, or somebody may give you some code, because there are really three paradigms. And I have brought this up just to, so you're learning callbacks this chunk. Next chunk, we learn promises. And then the last chunk, we learn the last paradigm called Async Await. So they're all doing the same concept. They're just handling it to different degrees with different syntax, but they're all doing the same basic idea, which is asynchronous calls. And again, this is not unique to JavaScript. Any language in our modern day environment has to be able to go out and get something from the web. Because can you imagine, think about, and you might be amazed how many times the apps that you use actually touch the web. One really kind of revealing moment is actually to take yourself offline and to see how many of your apps don't work. And that will tell you how many of them are doing some kind of call out to the web. And the answer is most of them. Like Facebook wouldn't work, Twitter wouldn't work, YouTube would work, but only on the videos that I downloaded. So almost every app you use of any significance is hitting the web. And in order to do that, those calls, those reaching out to the web, takes time. And we have to have a new way to talk about and to handle the fact that we're waiting for something to come back. And there's something that I often see used in JavaScript called set timeout to demonstrate this idea. But I really like the fact that he is actually giving you better examples than set timeout. Because the first time somebody showed me set timeout, I went, okay. But when you see it actually work, I think it's just much better. Okay. Setting the context then. So my point about the lectures is, if you want to, right, you could stop and really we end with a really important concept that is not just async await, it's just closures in general. This, I've watched a whole course just on understanding closure. So again, I like that you're getting exposed to it. So I felt like 103 through 110 really encapsulated this idea of the callback abstraction, or the callback pattern, explaining async versus synchronous execution. And again, we're using a little bit older way to do it, but he's going to, and I'm excited about this, he's actually going to update this through the rest of this course with the more common ways to do it. But again, I think it's good to learn them. So what do you need to do? So for this week, what I want you to do is I want you to use another site. And this is a very fun one to use because it's a very common one you see out on the web, called the Json Placeholder site. And here it is. Okay. And you can get this same experience that he was talking about, right? So it gives you, if you scroll down on the main page, you can see that you can, and I don't really care which of these, you could look at any of them. You can get posts, comments, albums, photos, to-dos, and users. I'm going to show the to-dos, right? It's because it makes the most sense given some of the stuff we've done in the past. So when you click into here, right, this is your URL that you code your XML HTTP request to handle, and you'll get back 100 to-dos, right? So I want you to write this in a callback pattern, making an app.js, a request.js, name it whatever you want, but app.js and some other name. I named it request. So that you go out there and you grab those 100 to-dos. Now, I almost thought about making this a little more like involved for the way that we've done to-dos in this class, but I thought, no, the purpose of this work is really just to give you the example. So this is my local implementation. And there's so much more you could do here. As a matter of fact, that's maybe one of the things I'm going to add to this is like do something more. Like first get this done. I think it should be fairly straightforward. Like, right? Like there's a complete, this is on this side, what you see is I just console logged what came back. So I have a user ID and ID itself, which is what I pulled the number for, the title, of course, and then a complete, which I didn't even implement. So I want you to think about like what you would do kind of to add some either functionality or design to this page. One fun thing might be just to like color every other line differently. That might be fun. Figure out how to do that. Could put the complete in there. You could do a search in there. I just want you to, and I will update my requirements here to say, right, so implement this, which I think because you've been given a good example, I think there's only one thing here that could trip you up. But again, if you attempt to do this without looking at my example, based on what you've learned through the course and using the callback pattern, and then implement this idea of abstracting it into a separate file, calling it from the app.js. Now, of course, I just iterated because through the array. So what comes back is this huge array. So what I did is I just modified my display on page to actually handle when I pass it the content that I want. But I think there's enough challenge here. So first implement, right, look at this. And again, you could use one of these other ones, totally okay with that, right? And these are endpoints. And if you click in, you just see the example in the browser. And again, the idea of going in, looking at that, looking at inspect, looking at the network tab to see, right? Network tab. Let me redo it so you can see that, right? So see what came back, right? These are all really good things to understand. But of course, what you really want to do here is now write your code to make an HTTP call to this endpoint. These are API endpoints. This is the way you do it. And by the way, we see this, as I mentioned before, all over the web. Like imagine every time you're on Google Maps, you're on Gmail, you're on some other site. That's what they're doing, is they're making some kind of request to bring you that data. Again, that's why this is so important to understand. Okay, so that's what you'll do is you'll implement that. And again, choose one of the other ones if you want, right? Normal processes, I want you to attempt this without looking at my code. If you do, just say that you looked at my code to get it done. And then I want you to add some functionality, either some design or some actual functionality to your output, right? Again, I haven't done this yet. I want you to do this on your own where you add, at least a couple of things. Make this look better or make this function better, whichever you feel inclined to do. Okay. And as I was doing this, I was again thinking about what I said with attendance this week. It's like, what will we do for our last dev? And now I'm almost thinking, I have only seen one reply so far to my attendance, so I don't have a lot of your input yet, and I'm open to that, but I'm almost thinking about giving you the choice, like writing some kind of asynchronous app concept or rebuilding most of what you wrote for Dev 1 in class functionality. Anyway, that's what I'm thinking right now. What's cool is that this semester I've been able to add a little more content to this class, which I think is really beneficial to you because being introduced to these concepts will help you as I'm repeating myself now in a future class or a future JavaScript, I can speak, experience. All right, have a wonderful day. Do your normal replies and a link to your Git hack. Somebody did mention there was an issue with Git hack. I made sure it worked today. It was no problem. So FYI. And I know I haven't posted my code yet, so I'm going to do that soon.